New York City, a place of dreams, lights, and endless energy. But have you ever wondered what was happening in the shadows while the city shined so bright? Behind the tall buildings of Manhattan and the busy streets of Times Square, there was another world. A world ruled by crime families where power was taken with fear and loyalty meant everything. And in the 1980s, one man rose above them all. His name was John Gotti. To many, he wasn't just a mob boss. He was a star. People called him the Dapper Don because of his sharp suits and rich style. Others called him the Teflon Don because no matter how many times he was charged, nothing seemed to stick. But who was John Gotti really? Was he a hero to the streets, or just another ruthless criminal? How did he become the most famous mob boss in America? And what price did he pay for living like a king in the underworld? This is the story of John Gotti, the crime king of New York. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to the Case File Vault and hit the like button. Here, we open the darkest files of history and crime, bringing you the stories that shaped the world in ways most never knew. Early life of John Gotti. John Joseph Gotti Jr. was born on October 27, 1940, in the Bronx, New York. He grew up in a big family, one of 13 children, in a poor Italian-American household. His father, John Sr., worked small jobs here and there, but money was always a problem. As a kid, Gotti hated the struggles of being poor. He dreamed of living big and fast, and he wanted to escape that life as soon as possible. By the time he was just 12 years old, he was already running small errands for gangsters in his neighborhood. School didn't matter much to him, and at 16, he dropped out completely, choosing the streets instead. Fearless and ambitious, Gotti quickly built a reputation. He started with small crimes like stealing trucks and hijacking goods. But in his mind, he wasn't meant to stay small. His goal was always bigger: the Mafia. Climbing the ranks. New York was ruled by 5 powerful Mafia families, and John Gotti chose to tie himself to the Gambino crime family, the strongest of them all. Under the guidance of underboss Agnello Della Croce, Gotti began climbing the ladder of organized crime. He wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty, and he proved his loyalty through violence. In 1973, Gotti was ordered to take out mobster James McBratney, who had killed a Gambino member. Gotti carried out the hit, but he was caught and sent to prison. Still, he only served a few years. When he came back, he wasn't just another soldier, he was a rising star. His mix of fearlessness and loyalty impressed the Gambino leadership. Before long, he was running loan sharking, gambling, extortion, and drug rackets in Queens, building a name that carried both respect and fear. For Gotti, this was only the beginning. The Dapper Don persona. John Gotti was not like the usual mob bosses who kept their heads down. He wanted attention. He wore sharp, expensive suits, drove flashy cars, and carried himself like a star. Reporters and cameras couldn't get enough of him. His photos were on the front pages, and people watched him walk into court as if he were walking a red carpet. In his neighborhood, he became a legend. Many locals loved him because he gave out money, helped families who were struggling, and even promised to keep drugs off the streets nearby. To them, he was more than a gangster. He was someone who looked after his people. But behind this polished and friendly image was a much colder man. Gotti ruled with fear. He made sure anyone who crossed him paid the price. The charm and fame were real, but so was the danger that came with his power. The brutal reality. The media loved to show John Gotti as a smooth, confident man. But behind the cameras, his world was built on fear. He wasn't just about charm, he was ruthless. If someone betrayed him or stood in his way, they often ended up dead. Gotti ordered hits on rivals, disloyal members of his crew, and anyone who dared to challenge his power. To him, loyalty wasn't just important, it was everything. Those closest to him understood that one mistake could cost them their life. People feared him as much as they respected him, and that mix gave him control over the streets. By the mid-1980s, Gotti had climbed high in the world of organized crime. His influence was growing stronger every day, and he was preparing for the boldest move of his entire career, a move that would make him one of the most infamous mob bosses in American history. The assassination of Paul Castellano. In the mid-1980s, the Gambino crime family was led by Paul Castellano, a man John Gotti never respected. Castellano focused more on money and business than the old-school mafia ways of power and loyalty. Many members of the family felt the same way. he didn't have the toughness or presence they expected from a true mob boss. Gotti saw an opportunity to change that. In December 1985, Castellano's reign came to a sudden and bloody end. As Castellano and his driver arrived at a Manhattan steakhouse, gunmen waited. Within moments, both men were gunned down in a perfectly planned hit. The killing shocked New York, not just because of its boldness, but because it sent a clear message. The streets now belonged to Gotti. Everyone knew who had ordered it, but no one dared say it out loud. Soon after, John Gotti officially stepped in as the new boss of the Gambino family, ruling the Gambino family. As boss of the Gambino family, John Gotti built an empire that made billions. His crew had control over construction, trucking, gambling, drugs, and even extortion. Almost every corner of New York had some connection to his family's business. Gotti stood at the top, the most powerful mobster in America. But Gotti wasn't the kind of boss who stayed in the shadows. He loved attention. He threw big parties, wore flashy suits, and walked through Little Italy like he was royalty. In restaurants, people would line up just to get a glimpse of him. The media couldn't get enough either. They called him the Teflon Don, painting him like a larger-than-life figure who could beat any case. But this spotlight came with a cost. While the public admired him, law enforcement was watching even closer. The attention that made him famous also made him a target. The FBI's hunt. The FBI and law enforcement could no longer sit back and watch John Gotti rise higher. His power and fame made him too big to ignore. They put together huge investigations, planting hidden microphones in his favorite hangouts, following his every move, and even trying to turn people close to him into informants. Still, bringing Gotti down was no easy job. He wasn't just bold, he was careful. Every meeting, every word, every step he took was planned. He surrounded himself with layers of protection, men who would never let anyone get too close. At the center of this shield was his underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano, a man known for his loyalty and toughness. For years, the FBI tried everything but failed again and again. Gotti seemed untouchable, always one step ahead, and his empire kept running strong. The Teflon Don era. Between 1987 and 1990, John Gotti faced trial after trial. The government thought they finally had him, but every time he stepped into court, he walked right back out a free man. Jurors were bribed, scared into silence, or simply won over by Gotti's charm and larger-than-life personality. It was during this time that the media gave him the nickname that would stick forever, the Teflon Don. No matter what charges they threw at him, nothing seemed to land. Everything slid right off. Outside the courthouse, people gathered like he was a celebrity. Each time he beat a case, the crowd exploded with cheers. Gotti would step out smiling, waving, almost mocking the system. He looked untouchable, and for a while, he truly was. To the public, he wasn't just a mob boss, he was a living legend who had outsmarted the law. The fall of Gotti. Even the Teflon Don couldn't stay untouchable forever. The FBI secretly bugged his favorite spot, the Ravenite Social Club, and recorded him talking about murders and family business. But the real blow came from his own man, Sammy the Bull Gravano. To save himself, Gravano turned on Gotti and testified. With the tapes and Sammy's words, the empire Gotti built finally came crashing down. Life in prison. In 1992, John Gotti's luck finally ran out. He was found guilty of murder, racketeering, and more, earning a life sentence with no parole. Locked away in a small cell in Illinois, far from his old power, his health slowly faded. In 2002, at just 61, Gotti died of throat cancer behind bars. The legacy of John Gotti. Even after his death, John Gotti's name refuses to fade. To some, he was a local hero who challenged the system. To others, he was a ruthless gangster who left pain behind. Hollywood, TV, and documentaries keep his story alive, mixing charm with violence. Gotti's life shows the two faces of organized crime, the flashy appeal that attracts people and the harsh cruelty hiding underneath. His legacy remains a symbol of both power and tragedy. Conclusion. So that was the rise and fall of John Gotti, the man who once ruled New York's underworld like a king. He dressed sharp, lived loud, and for years the law couldn't touch him. But in the end, even the so-called Teflon Don couldn't escape justice. It makes you wonder, can anyone really stay untouchable forever? Was Gotti's downfall because of betrayal, Or was it simply the weight of his own power catching up to him? And if he had chosen a different path, could his story have ended differently? History shows us that no empire built on fear lasts forever. Gotti may have been the Dapper Don, but in the end, he was just another man brought down by the very world he tried to control. If you found this story interesting, make sure to subscribe to the Case File Vault and hit the like button. There are many more hidden stories, dark truths, and powerful lessons waiting for you. Because every crime leaves a story, and every story deserves to be told.